On a day meant for love, flowers, and tender moments, one woman's laughter turned a professed love into a deadly obsession. What began as an innocent chuckle on Valentine's Day spiraled into a chilling murder, revealing the thin line between affection and violence. The tragic story of Anitra Gunn is a stark reminder that love, when twisted by anger and rejection, can lead to irreversible consequences. This is a tale of passion gone wrong, of trust betrayed, and of a life cut short, all triggered by a laugh on the most romantic day of the year. The fatal laughter that changed everything. Valentine's Day is typically filled with love, roses, and heartfelt gestures, but for Anitra Gunn, it became a day of horror that no one saw coming. The 23-year-old Fort Valley State University student was reported missing on February 14, 2020, after she mysteriously vanished on what should have been a day of celebration. The day had started with the usual pleasantries, but it took a dark turn when her boyfriend, Demarcus Little, decided to bare his soul. In a twist that no one could have predicted, Anitra's response, a simple laugh, set off a chain of events that would lead to her untimely death. This laughter, which could have been innocent and playful, became the trigger for a horrifying act of violence. A tale of love turned deadly. Demarcus Little, an Army surgeon stationed at Fort Gordon, had been in a relationship with Anitra Gunn for several years. Their relationship had its ups and downs, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary until that fateful Valentine's Day. On that day, in a moment of vulnerability, Little poured out his heart, professing his deep love for Anitra. But instead of receiving the warm and reassuring response he anticipated, Anitra laughed, a reaction that Little took as a humiliating rejection. Little claimed he blacked out after her reaction, and in a fit of uncontrollable rage, he strangled Anitra to death. The contrast between his emotional confession and her unintended response created a volatile situation that quickly escalated into something tragic and irreversible. The cover-up and a friend's betrayal. After committing the brutal act, Little did not immediately face the consequences of his actions. Instead, he made a calculated decision to cover up the crime, dragging his friend, Javon Abram, into the dark deed. Together, they decided to dispose of Anitra's body in a wooded area of Crawford County, Georgia, hiding her under a pile of sticks in a desperate attempt to keep the crime hidden. Abram later confessed to authorities that he had helped Little dispose of evidence, including a car bumper that had been dislodged during the disposal process. This act of betrayal, where a friend became complicit in hiding the truth, added another layer of complexity to the case. Abram's eventual confession would prove to be a critical piece in unraveling the crime, but it also raised questions about loyalty and the lengths people will go to protect one another, even when it means covering up a murder. The chilling confession. During the trial, the court was presented with a chilling confession that shed light on Little's twisted mindset. Abram's testimony revealed that Little had confessed to him that he felt Anitra wanted to go home to be with her mom, who had tragically passed away in 2014. This statement added a disturbing layer to the case, as it suggested that Little had convinced himself that Anitra's death was somehow justified or even desired by her. Little's rationale for the murder was not just an attempt to mitigate his guilt, but also a delusional belief that he was fulfilling some twisted version of Anitra's wishes. This chilling confession highlighted the depth of Little's psychological unraveling and the dangerous intersection of love, obsession, and delusion that led to Anitra's death. The hunt for justice. The search for Anitra Gunn began as soon as her disappearance was reported, sparking a widespread investigation that gripped the local community and beyond. Her abandoned car was the first major clue, but it was the discovery of her body on February 18, 2020, that confirmed everyone's worst fears. Investigators quickly focused on Demarcus Little, whose behavior and conflicting statements raised red flags from the start. As the investigation intensified, so did the community's demand for answers and justice. The case became a focal point for discussions about intimate partner violence and the red flags that are often overlooked until it's too late. The relentless pursuit of justice for Anitra was a testament to the tireless efforts of law enforcement, who worked diligently to piece together the events leading to her death and bring her killer to justice. A family's grief and a community's outrage. Anitra's murder sent shockwaves through her family and the Fort Valley State University community. Her death was more than just a tragic loss. It was a wake-up call to the dangers lurking in seemingly ordinary relationships. Vigils were held in her honor, and the hashtag Justice for Anitra became a powerful rallying cry across social media platforms. Anitra's family, shattered by the loss, made an emotional plea during the trial for the harshest sentence possible, emphasizing that they would never utter Little's name in court, a gesture that spoke volumes about their pain and anger. The community, too, was united in their outrage, demanding not only justice for Anitra, but also greater awareness of the warning signs of domestic violence. Anitra's death was a profound loss, but it also became a catalyst for change as her story resonated with many who had experienced similar forms of abuse. The verdict and the aftermath. The trial of Demarcus Little was a long and arduous process, but it ultimately led to a guilty verdict that provided some measure of closure for Anitra's loved ones. In March 2022, Little was found guilty of felony murder and aggravated assault, although the jury acquitted him of malicious murder. The verdict reflected the complex nature of the case, acknowledging the gravity of Little's actions while also considering the nuances of the law. The prosecution's argument for life without the possibility of parole was a poignant reminder of the severity of the crime. In their final statements, they described how Little had disposed of Anitra like garbage, a visceral image that underscored the callousness of his actions. The sentence of life without parole was not just a punishment, but a message that such acts of violence would not be tolerated. Reflections on a life cut short. Anitra Gunn was more than just a victim of a horrific crime. She was a young woman full of dreams and aspirations, with a bright future ahead of her. A graduate of Westlake High School in Atlanta, Anitra was pursuing a degree in agriculture at Fort Valley State University, where she was well loved by friends and professors alike. Her life was filled with promise, and her tragic death left a void that could never be filled. As we reflect on the circumstances of her death, it's important to remember her not just for the tragedy that befell her, but for the life she lived and the potential she had. Anitra's story is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of valuing and protecting those we love. Her legacy is one of resilience and a call to action to prevent such senseless violence from claiming more lives. Lessons in domestic violence awareness. The murder of Anitra Gunn has become a poignant case study in the dangers of domestic violence and the often overlooked warning signs. What began as a seemingly normal relationship quickly devolved into a nightmare, highlighting the need for greater awareness and intervention in cases of intimate partner violence. Anitra's story is not just a cautionary tale, but a call to action for communities to be more vigilant and proactive in recognizing and addressing the signs of abuse. Her death has spurred conversations about the need for more resources and support for victims of domestic violence, as well as the importance of education in preventing such tragedies. The lessons learned from Anitra's case are a powerful reminder that we must do more to protect vulnerable individuals and ensure that no one else has to suffer a similar fate. A call to remember Anitra Gunn. As we reflect on the tragic events that led to Anitra Gunn's death, it's essential to remember her for who she was: a daughter, a friend, and a promising young woman whose life was cut short far too soon. The case may have concluded in the courtroom, but the fight for justice and the push for greater domestic violence awareness continues in her memory. Anitra's story is a reminder that behind every headline, there is a real person with hopes, dreams, and loved ones left behind. Let her story serve as a beacon for change, urging us to take action to prevent such senseless acts of violence in the future. As we remember Anitra Gunn, let her legacy inspire us to create a world where love does not turn into violence, and where every person can live free from fear and harm. If you found this video as chilling as we did, don't forget to hit that like button because, let's be honest, Nothing says, I'm hooked like a thumbs up. And while you're at it, subscribe to our channel for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.